Liam Neeson, the man, the myth, the legend. But what are his top movies? Today I'm going to be guiding you through 20 of the very best of them. Hi guys, so I think Liam Neeson as an actor deserves way more love than he gets. He is somebody with just an incredible screen presence, and I have definitely enjoyed following his career over the years, so consider this a little bit of a celebration of Mr. Neeson's acting career. I'm going to be ranking 20 of his movies from worst to best. I've not seen all of his films, but not by a long shot, so if you feel like I've missed anything out today, then by all means let me know in the comments. Possibly it will be a film that I would like to check out. But let's crack on with the 20 films that are in today's list, beginning with the one at number 20. This is a thriller that came out just last year. So Neeson plays a Vietnam vet whose name I can't remember. You know what though? I'm not going to be able to remember the names of all of these one-off characters that Neeson plays in this list. So for the most part, I'm just going to refer to a lot of these characters as Liam Neeson, with one or two exceptions. So in this film, Liam Neeson plays an ex-Vietnam vet who is now working as a kind of off-the-books enforcer for the FBI. But he's getting a bit fed up of that. He doesn't like doing it. But the trouble is his point man in the FBI doesn't want him to quit. So there's a bit of conflict there. Plus, this point man is corrupt and causing murders and things. So Neeson has to therefore take him down throughout the course of this movie. But he soon finds himself being chased by FBI agents and things. And there's a whole subplot involving something to do with environmental terrorism or something, maybe. To be honest, the plot in my head has already gone a bit hazy, and I saw this film less than a year ago. It is a little bit forgettable as a film, but it's still an all right little thriller to watch on a midweek night. There is one outstanding scene where Neeson's in this house and some assassins come round to get him, and for some reason the house is flooded a little bit, so there's danger from electrocution, there's danger from the assassins. It's a good little shootout. Not a bad little film, but we will definitely probably never see this one enter the Neeson Hall of Fame if such a thing was to exist. In this one, Neeson plays a professional thief who is suffering a little bit of a guilt trip in his old age, and he decides to turn himself in. So he arranges to meet a couple of FBI agents in a hotel room with all the money that he stole from his latest job. But the trouble is, one of these agents is Ben and decides to steal the money for himself and set it up so that Neeson has to die. I forget the exact details on this. All I do know is that Neeson ends up on the run from the FBI for the second time in this rankings already. And what complicates matters further is the fact that around about the same time that Neeson is having his guilt trip, he's also getting into a relationship with a woman. That might be why he has the guilt trip, actually, from memory. This woman, I can't remember her character name, but she's played by Kate Walsh, an actress who is generally more famous for TV than film. She was in Private Practice and Grey's Anatomy. So Neeson, with the help of this woman, has to prove that he's just a thief. He's nothing more than that. And he also has to find a way to get this bad egg within the FBI arrested, and to get this guy his comeuppance. I think it's a slightly better movie than Blacklight, just because Neeson has somebody to bounce off in this film, whereas in Blacklight he's mostly flying solo. But even though I can't remember the exact reason why Neeson has to be killed in this film, it's still a good watch. I really enjoyed it. In this one, Neeson plays a hitman working for a drug cartel crime lord, but Neeson's memory's starting to go, so he wants out. Second time today that Neeson has wanted out from somewhere. I should have made this ranking a drinking game. Take a drink every time Neeson wants out from somewhere, every time he is on the run from the FBI, every time he beds a woman at least 15 years his junior, every time he plays a former SAS type figure, every time he says that he doesn't condone violence and then goes and kills 10 guys in the next scene. I could have made a very long list, to be honest, and I probably would have been very drunk by the end of the video. So this crime lord basically isn't willing to let Neeson retire, so he's on the run from this guy and his goons, and he's also on the run from the FBI, drink, because he's being falsely blamed by them for the death of a child, but Neeson's character didn't do that particular hit. There's also another villain in this, played by Monica Bellucci. She's like a businesswoman. I don't think they fully realise the potential of Monica Bellucci as a villain. She's a little bit of a throwaway character in the end, but she is there. And something else that's weird that happened in this. So there's an actress called Natalie Anderson, a British actress who's mostly famous for being in things like soap, daytime TV soaps like Hollyoaks and Emmerdale, but she turns up in this film really randomly as like the wife of a drug lord, and she's even doing a Latino accent, even though she's from like Yorkshire or somewhere else up north. But just seeing her in this Hollywood thriller was really weird, having only seen her in British soaps. I looked at her for like 2 minutes thinking, where do I know that face from? But this is a good film overall, even if there is a danger that after you watch it, your memory of it will start to go as badly as Liam Neeson's in the movie. This is my least favourite of the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. It's not that it's a bad film, not at all. I mean, compared to some of the dross they brought out in the 90s when it comes to Batman, this is on another level. I just happen to prefer The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, that's all. And I think the main reason for that is because the origin story in Batman Begins takes a long time to get through. When it comes to rewatching these films, I can just never motivate myself to go through that whole journey up the mountain to get the purple flower again. Liam Neeson plays Ra's al Ghul in this. He starts out as Batman's mentor and then he goes on to become the main villain. They have a big fight on a monorail. It's not what I consider to be a typical sort of Liam Neeson role, but he does really well with it. And I've got to stress once again, this is a really, really solid Batman movie. It's just not one of my favourites. Critics were a little bit harsh on Taken 2, I thought. I mean, okay, this isn't as good as the original, sure, but when you boil it down, this is still Liam Neeson in Turkey, an exotic location, running around shooting at least a dozen guys. We can all enjoy that, can't we? I mean, I can't put my finger on why this doesn't quite work the way that the first movie does without going really forensic on it. It's just not as good second time around somehow. It was very clear to me at the end of this film that Taken wasn't going to become a long running thing. You know, they were already on borrowed time by the end of this one. I mean, I went into the cinema really pumped up to see more Brian Mills, but when I came out, I think I said to my wife, "Yeah, that was pretty good, but I don't need any more now. I'm good. You know, I don't need a Taken 3, but we still got one anyway." You know what? On the subject of Taken 3, let me just say right now, that film does not appear in this list. If you're a massive Taken 3 fan, waiting patiently for your favourite film to appear, I will spare you having to watch the rest of the video. Maybe one day when I do my 20 worst Liam Neeson films, we will cover Taken 3, but not today, sadly. In this one, Liam Neeson plays a hitman. There's no alcohol in this. It is very early on a Sunday. And sorry for the princess cut, but I do live with a wife and a daughter. That's my excuse. So Neeson works for a crime lord in this, played by Ed Harris, who is brilliant in this movie, by the way. But he accidentally kills Harris's son for reasons. And so Neeson has to go on the run from this crime guy and his goons. And Neeson is also on the run from the FBI. Because of the same murder, I think, and also the murder of a cop, which wasn't really Neeson's fault, but he's being blamed for it. And if Neeson didn't already have enough on his plate with all this stuff, he's also trying to make up with his estranged son whilst he's on the run. And he's also got the attentions of this hitman who's got this weird kind of infragreen one-eyed scope and a bulletproof vest. He's a very funny assassin. I can't remember the name of him, but this was actually my most recent Liam Neeson watch. I saw it just a week ago for the first time, and it was actually watching this film that galvanized me into making this video. This is more of a Clint Eastwood movie than a Liam Neeson one. I'd actually argue it's more of a Jim Carrey movie than a Liam Neeson movie because Jim Carrey gets the best scene in this film. Neeson plays a horror director who is being blamed for a series of murders. I think the murders might take place on his set, or maybe the murders are similar to ones that have happened in Neeson's movies. I can't recall, actually. It's been a while since I saw this film, a long while, actually. but I don't think that it's actually Neeson who is the killer. I think it's somebody else. I know that the final kill in this is Dirty Harry shooting somebody with a harpoon gun. I remember that moment vividly, but I'm 95% certain, but not 100% certain, that it's not Liam Neeson on the end of the harpoon gun. But I can't say for sure. But this is by no means the worst of the Dirty Harry films, even though it was the last one they ever made. Here, Neeson plays a trucker who has to undertake this really dangerous truck journey across Alaska. It might not even be on a road that this journey has to be taken, it might just be a landscape. But the danger is that at any point, the ice could crack and the truck could go under. I can't remember why it's so imperative that this particular rig has to take this really dangerous route and do it quickly. There's some kind of corrupt person at the end of the journey who has to be dealt with, I think. I can't remember the details, but it's different from Neeson's norm. It's not an action film. There's no stuff like that in it. It's just a very exciting film about trucking, and I thought it was really good. I'd definitely watch it again. In this one, Neeson plays a former Marine. He lives in a ranch house near the Arizona-Mexico border, and he's behind on his payments for this house, so he's in danger of losing it. His life really is in the toilet, this character. But one day he meets this Mexican woman and son who have just managed to get across the border from Mexico. But the trouble is they're being pursued by Mexican gangsters for some reason. Now, a shootout ensues. Neeson kills one of the gangsters, but the mother of the son gets killed as well. So Neeson takes the son, rescues him, sort of thing, and flees. But the guy Neeson shot just happens to be like the brother of the main honcho back in Mexico. So all these angry Mexicans suddenly cross the border, chasing after Neeson and this boy. But Neeson is busy taking this boy to Chicago because I think before the mother died, she let it be known that there's a relative in Chicago who might take care of the boy permanently if Neeson can just get him there. So this is kind of like a road movie in the end. Neeson's fleeing up north with this boy, and all these Mexicans are giving chase, these angry Mexicans with guns. And it's a pretty good little thriller. Honestly, there's a really, really good shootout near the end. I thoroughly enjoyed this one. It's highly recommended. This is another thriller, but it's got a different feel to most of the other films on this list because Neeson's playing a private detective rather than a hitman. So what we've got here is there's a gangster whose wife's been murdered, and this guy hires Neeson to track down whoever killed her. So Neeson's going around this city trying to put the clues together. It's Boston, so it's got a bit of an Irish sort of feel, this film, which definitely suits Neeson down to a T. But he's got to go here and there, and with every passing scene, he's getting one step closer to the killers. We don't find out too much about the killers until quite late on. So there's quite a sinister sort of atmosphere in the air in this film, which I kind of liked. There's a little boy who helps Neeson out from time to time. David Harbour plays one of the killers. Now, these days, Harbour is probably more known for his slightly comical roles, like in Black Widow or that Santa film that he did quite recently. I haven't seen it, but it looks very tongue-in-cheek. But here, he's playing a really evil guy, and he's absolutely brilliant at it. So, yeah, good film, this. But it's time to go into my top 10 and find out what the really brilliant Liam Neeson films are. I did a rough draft of this rankings on paper to begin with, and I had Gangs of New York at 6th, actually. But on reflection, I decided to just bump this down a bit because it's not strictly a Liam Neeson film, Gangs of New York. He's only in the first 10, 15 minutes and then he dies. But at the same time, I still wanted to keep this film inside the top 10 because it is an excellent film. It is better than most of the films we've been talking about so far. So this is about gangs in New York, basically, as you'd expect. It takes place, I'm going to sound like an idiot if I get this wrong, but I think it takes place at the end of the 19th century, around about that period maybe. We've got all these various gangs and lawlessness going on. You've got Daniel Day-Lewis, Leonardo DiCaprio, Cameron Diaz. It's a really great cast. And Neeson plays a priest, I think, who is heavily involved in one particular gang, and they all get wiped out in the first 10 minutes by Daniel Day-Lewis and his mob. But it's at least nice to see Neeson show his face, I suppose. Anything from this point onwards that you've either not heard of or only barely heard of, consider it a hidden gem. Starting with this one, this film is cool as hell. So Neeson plays maybe a snowplow worker. He might be like an ex-Marine as well, I'm not sure. But he gets involved with some gangsters in this film. I think they kill one of his friends, maybe, or colleagues, and he starts going around bumping these gangsters off one by one. I think the entire film must take place maybe in Canada or maybe the Seattle area or something like that, because the entire film is covered in snow. There's snow everywhere, whether we're in the countryside or even in the city. It's a completely snowy film, and I like that. Every time a film is covered in snow, I like it because I just think it's a great aesthetic for film. So Neeson's going around doing all these kills. I wouldn't say they're particularly brutal kills, but I like the way that he disposes with the bodies sometimes. Like he throws one body off a waterfall. And there's a little bit of a comic edge to this film as well, because every time Neeson kills somebody, there's like a caption that comes on the bottom of the screen. It'll say something like "Kill number 2, Bob," or something like that. It doesn't actually say that, but there's something there that comes on the screen every time he kills someone pointlessly, but it's there. And the film finishes with something that's a little bit funny as well, something to do with a parachute that comes on just before the end credits. I won't spoil what that is, but it just gave me a little giggle just as the film was about to end. So yeah, I really like this one. I would buy a Blu-ray for this one if I saw it cheap enough. It's cool. This is another one that's about memory loss, sort of. So Neeson's character gets into an accident in this, and he wakes up in hospital, and he can sort of remember his life, but some details are a bit hazy. And when he leaves the hospital, I think certain people in his life claim that they don't actually know him, and so he's having this whole identity crisis. And so he's got to go through this film and figure out what the hell's going on and why his life is not quite in the order it was before his accident, sort of thing. And I think it all culminates in a terrorist plot involving a bomb in a hotel or something like that. It's been a long time since I saw this movie, so I'm very hazy on the exact details. Everything's all jumbled up in my head with this film. I think I watched it just after I'd seen Taken for the first time many, many years ago, because watching Taken just put me in this whole Liam Neeson phase where I just had to check out more of his stuff. But I'm very, very confident that anybody who gives this film a go will not consider it an evening wasted. Just as I saw Unknown on the back of having watched Taken, I saw Rob Roy on the back of having watched Braveheart, because this is also a historical epic that takes place in Scotland, except I might actually prefer this to Braveheart. It's got a cooler ending. The ending to Braveheart is just really depressing for me, but at the end of this film, Liam Neeson takes on Tim Roth in a battle to the death with cutlasses, and it's just really cool. So I've skipped over the story here. So Liam Neeson basically plays this normal family guy. He might be a farmer. He lives in a stone cottage with his wife and kids, but he gets cheated out of 1,000 gold by a young aristocrat played by Roth, and the law comes down on the side of the aristocrat because he's got the better connections in Parliament. Liam Neeson is up against it in this film because of his class, it feels a lot of the time. So these two men have this feud throughout the movie, but Neeson at least gets the chance to take on the aristocrat in this fight to the death at the end. But it's a really great film. There's like battles and skirmishes throughout it, and I just thoroughly enjoyed it. It might actually be one of the earliest Liam Neeson films I ever saw. In Non-Stop, Liam Neeson plays an airport security officer who realises there's a bomb on the commercial flight that he's on. So yeah, in this, Liam Neeson is mooching around this plane while it's high up in the sky. He's trying to find this bomb and at the same time not panic all the passengers on the plane who are not aware of the threat. And another thing that Neeson has got to be wary of is the fact that the people behind the bomb are probably on the plane among the passengers somewhere. So there's a little bit of an executive decision type setup with this one, but it's a riveting watch. The twists when they come are very satisfying. Honestly, this is a textbook example of how to do a thriller on an aeroplane where you've only got a compact space to work with and you've got to keep the viewer entertained for a long, long time within that same location. Really good film, this. So into the top five we go with The Grey. In this one, Neeson plays some kind of oil worker in Alaska, and he has to go on this small plane with his colleagues. I don't know where they're going. I guess everywhere in Alaska is quite spread out. But anyway, this plane crashes in the wilderness, and Neeson has to eat his passengers to stay alive. No, I'm just joking. What actually happens is that everybody who survives the initial plane crash starts getting chased by this pack of wolves. I'm being serious this time. And the wolves start to pick off all these characters one by one throughout the movie. So there's a little bit of a horror film sort of feel to this, but the reason why I've got it this high in the ranking is because I just love the scenery in this film. I'm not sure if they're actually in Alaska, but the vistas and all the kind of snowy areas that they go to, they just look absolutely phenomenal. The sort of film that makes me want to go on an adventure holiday somewhere like Canada or maybe even Alaska itself. The ending is a little bit underwhelming. The first time I watched the movie, I was kind of like, oh, really? We're doing that at the end of this film? But you just have to sort of get used to what they were going for, I guess. But this is a really top class film, and it's sort of comparable to an old Anthony Hopkins film that I saw this one time. I can't remember the title of that, but there was this film where Anthony Hopkins was being chased across Alaska by a bear. And watching The Grey kind of reminded me of that film, but certainly this one is the better of the two. In The Commuter, Liam Neeson plays a random guy on a train who realises there's a bomb on board. Actually, there might not be a bomb on the train in this movie. The bomb might be somewhere else from memory, and Neeson has to do something on the train to stop the bomb going off, or something bad happening somewhere else. I'm a little bit hazy on the details. I didn't see this film that long ago. I just remember it being absolutely awesome. Literally, most of this movie takes place on a train somewhere in New York. Neeson's running up and down these carriages trying to sort stuff out. I think he's got to try and identify a certain somebody on the train or something. Vera Farmiga is the main villain, but she's not on the train, so we don't get to see that much of her. She's not wearing a cross in this movie. She's very sinister, though. There's not much action in this, but it's really, really exciting. And Liam Neeson's performance in this one is really, really intense. I thoroughly enjoyed this film. I enjoy any films that take place on trains, so this was right up my alley. I think most people, even if they haven't seen this film, sort of know what it is. It's a World War II film about this Austrian guy played by Neeson who he kind of fights back against Nazi Germany in any way that he can from his position of power and the wealth that he's got. He just pushes back a little against the against Hitler's advance as much as he's able to. Anyway, as much as he's able to get away with. It's a very bleak sort of film. It's kind of depressing at times to watch. There's a lot of nasty stuff in this, and yet it never goes too far. It never has you turning away and wanting to turn it off. It never quite makes you upset somehow, and yet it's still a very powerful film all the same. It does feel like you're watching a history lesson at times rather than an actual movie, but it's so captivating, honestly. I've seen it at least a couple of times from memory. Definitely for me, one of the best films that came out in the 90s. This is what you would call a historical epic about a young guy who travels to Jerusalem during the Crusades and helps protect a city against, I don't know who actually. I don't know who the sides are in this film actually. I'm not that knowledgeable when it comes to the real world events that this film is based upon. Shame on me. I mainly just enjoy it as a really cool action film with fighting and political intrigue and backstabbing and things happening. It's not a big Liam Neeson vehicle. He's not the biggest role in this, not by a long stretch. Orlando Bloom's the main man, and then Jeremy Irons is in it as well, Eva Green. I think Neeson at least gets more screen time in this than he does in Gangs of New York, but you wouldn't ordinarily think of it as a Liam Neeson film. It's definitely one of Ridley Scott's best films, I think, because he directs this. It's a film that deserves to be in the same breath as something like Gladiator, because of the fact that it's historical. Although certainly Gladiator has always managed to get more plaudits than Kingdom of Heaven, mainly because of all that Colosseum fighting stuff that everybody loves. You know, Kingdom of Heaven is not a film with big, what you would call trailer moments and memorable moments. It's just a very, very consistent film all the way through. But now that we've talked about Kingdom of Heaven, it's now time to get on and find out what is my favourite Liam Neeson film of all time. Let's go. Yeah, it's Taken, baby. One of the best action films ever made, surely. This is a film and a half. I'm not talking in terms of runtime. It's probably not the longest film in the world. 89 minutes, actually, not that long, but it's just a wonderful, wonderful film. Liam Neeson travels to Paris to try and rescue his daughter from the clutches of Albanian druggies, and he just kicks arse in so many brilliant and unexpected ways in this film. It's so exciting. My brother recommended this film to me, and when I watched it, I was like, "Oh my god, why didn't I watch that when it first came out?" I do feel a little bit embarrassed putting this film at number one when I've got these historical films of cultural and historical significance at two and three, like Kingdom of Heaven and Schindler's List. This is just essentially some made up action bollocks when you boil it down, but it's just so much fun. I absolutely love this film. I've watched it several times since it came out. The sequels just couldn't stand up to this original, sadly. Although I did at least find a spot for Taken 2 lower down, didn't I? But anyway, that wraps up my top 20 Liam Neeson movies. By all means, leave me your list in the comments below if you have one, and I'll see you again another time. Until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.